Greetings, BookTube. This is a tentative first draft of a sample Talk Swop in response to Lucas MF's video, The Great War Romance, about Ernest Hemingway's Farewell to Arms. You can see how it differs from my review of Farewell to Arms, which I have posted in my shorts. Lucas, the one thing I would say is, one important thing to say before we begin about these is these are not critiques of the videos. Okay, these are critiques of the book being discussed. So we're not going to talk about, choices that the person making the video might have made, or things that did or didn't leave out, or anything like that. We're just going to add on our own stuff. Lucas MF spends a good amount of time focused on the war, in which I remind you Hemingway was with a Red Cross ambulance corps in Italy during World War I. As a volunteer, he was actually not able to enlist as a soldier because he had taken too many knocks to the noggin already boxing. So his machismo had already begun at this point, but we'll talk more about that in a second. So one of the things that I remember Lucas talking about in this video, or one of his other videos about Hemingway, was how many shots Ernest took to the head. I mean, he crashed everything he'd crashed. He crashed 2 planes in succession. I mean, he was in 2 plane crashes in succession at one point. He did have a lot of head injuries, and I can tell you from my work with people who are having ideations about self-harm, they, a lot of them struggle with chronic pain. Living with chronic pain will definitely deplete you as a person. So I am definitely not downplaying that. In fact, I quite agree with Lucas's take that was probably very, contributed a lot to Ernest's suicide. However, we could say that is the bullet that loaded the gun, but what pulled the trigger. And this obsession is now mine that's bleeding into talking about the suicide. I can't help reading every author who commits suicide, every one of their books, as a sort of note, a suicide note, and trying to figure out what they're telling us, whether it's Confederacy of Dunces or, in this case, especially Farewell to Arms, because in Farewell to Arms, early on in Ernest's career, he's not the stereotype of Ernest Hemingway yet. Obviously, he would go on to sit at the feet of George of Stein in Paris. So, his machismo had levels to it. So the reason I'm going to talk about the machismo element is because Lucas MF has a he refers to in this video Hemingway's gender curiosity, and I believe he talks more about it in one of his other videos about Hemingway. So I'm going to take that up. I don't know anything about any gender curiosity on his part. I just know vaguely of his marriages to women, but I can talk to the machismo. So that's how I'm linking up with Lucas MF's video. One thing that I don't think Lucas MF might have mentioned in this video anyway was that Ernest Hemingway's father committed suicide. And I believe that this, was the ticking time bomb that was always going to go off in Ernest's life, whether from interiority, from pure hormones, malproduction or maldistribution or whatever biologically happens when we have these mental illnesses that seem to have some genetic elements to them, but also in the fact of, Ernest trying to become, the strong man that would not kill himself, that would not abandon his family. This, I believe, is what leads to earnest life wish and death wish, in which he's constantly rushing into war, he's trying to be a hero in a non-heroic age, in my opinion. And in World War I, he firmly realizes that there are no more heroes. It is absurd. The center cannot hold. It's a wasteland. I remember a scene from this book where the main character gets badly injured, which sort of sets up the whole thing where he's in the hospital, and then he's being visited by this priest and this sort of ne'er-do-well friend of his, who brings him booze, and of course the nurse that he ends up having the love story with at the end, and she dies in childbirth, which classically was how women battled fate in childbirth and men in war. And Lucas MF tells us that at one point, love is greater than war. I think he used a different word. So I remember the scene where he gets injured. What I found so horrible about it was how it began. I believe I said in my review in Media Race. It was actually in the middle of a meal. So what is more terrible to me than the fragments, than the shrapnel, than the dead, the randomness of shrapnel where some people got hit, some didn't, some fatally, some superficially, was the macaroni. The way they were just sitting there eating just another meal, and then some of them were no more. That juxtaposition is what I find so horrible. And I think probably really Hemingway, faced with this sort of modern situation, it's hard to imagine heroes, isn't it? You're just lucky or you're unlucky. The shrapnel gets you or it doesn't. Lucas MF provides us with a good textual example of this. He much more technologically savvy than me. He has some beautiful images about the war and everything, and he has the words, Hemingway's words, across the screen there. And it's a quote about where our main character also shoots a man somewhat randomly for failing to help out in a, dig the ambulance out, or I can't remember the exact context of it. But what I want to emphasize on that quote that he pulls up is the part where it says he aimed at one of them, he aimed at the one who talked the most, and fired and hit one of the three. So here again we see, now this is by by the main character's own hand. And imagine if you did kill someone randomly like that in war, and carried that through all the years of bullfights in Paris cafes and Cuban fishing. You would have precarious mental health for sure if you had that on your soul. I'm not saying that happened to Hemingway. It just happened to his character. But, it's that element of randomness again, which one gets shot, why. Later on, there's another scene like this where, so the Italians are shooting all the deserters. It's not going well for the Italians. People are deserting, and they're shooting deserters. But the problem is that some people are just lost. They're not deserters at all. They have gotten separated from the battalion. It's chaotic. And they risk being picked up by their own people and shot as traitors, as AWOL, deserters. Right. All right. I think I've pounded that nail enough. So yeah, this sort of randomness, I think, defeats Hemingway's purpose of trying to become a hero. We can see this in the love story too, but I won't go on too much about that because Lucas doesn't, and I want our next commentator to comment more on that. So, if this randomness is a theme. How is it taken up in the other characters of the novel? Rinaldi, the ne'er-do-well friend, the priest, and of course his love interest, and maybe another character, maybe the innkeeper. Also, do we feel that this fuels certain machismo, and what kind of machismo? And does it go so far as to lend itself to some gender curiosity, which you may know about more from Hemingway's life that I do not, but more importantly, that shows up maybe in our text here? Do we feel, as I do, that this early work is really a chance to see the real Hemingway coming to grips with this stuff, and that I feel is later on performative, where he's simply imitating himself, being a caricature of Hemingway, the macho Hemingway, fighting bulls and doing all this stuff. For me, this is the seminal text for understanding what went wrong in Hemingway's tragic life. I mean, nonetheless, a beautiful life in which he gave us so much wonderful art to share with all the world, and deepening our understanding, hopefully, of one another through these discussions. Let me know what you think. So that is what sort of a Talk Swap would look like. And then at this point, I would tag Lucas and say, hey, I did a Talk Swap video. And anyone who would then see either mine or Lucas's could also link to either of us. Although please don't do it to Lucas, because he did not actually create his video as a Talk Swap. I just picked him as a sacrificial victim, for which I hope you will forgive me. There's something about his vibe and aura and soul and his lostness over there, I think in China somewhere, that makes me think he might indulge me with this. If I can, I'll try to contact him for permission. In the meantime, tell me what you think, please. I'd love your feedback. This is an ongoing project. It's being shaped as we speak. Lots of questions still to be asked and answered about how to do this thing. But the point is to just do it, and we'll talk about it afterwards. And that'll be fun and interesting, I hope. Thank you.